Mondays are supposed to be easy. A couple clogged drains, maybe a flickering hallway light, and I'm out by 4. That morning, I was halfway through replacing a busted garbage disposal in 2A when the call came through from the front desk. "Hey, Jesse, we've got a last-minute ticket," Sandra said through the walkie. "Apartment 3C, says their front door's jammed. Won't open properly." I glanced at my list. I wasn't scheduled for 3C. "Well, now you are," she quipped. "Owner's new. Seems particular. Great. Probably some Wall Street guy with no patience and an overpriced espresso machine." I slung my tool bag over my shoulder and took the elevator up. The 3rd floor smelled like lemon floor cleaner and new paint. Management had been trying to attract a better clientele, which basically meant rich people who didn't say hi in the hallway. When I got to 3C, the door was half cracked open, like someone had tried to force it and given up halfway. I knocked gently. It opened further, slowly, awkwardly, and there he was. Adrien. Of course, I didn't know his name yet. All I knew was that he had the kind of face you don't forget. Angular jaw, dark hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a noir film, and sharp eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He wore a fitted navy button-up that screamed boutique price tag, sleeves rolled just enough to show faint veins, and a silver watch. It looked like he was heading out to dinner, not waiting for a handyman. "You're here for the door?" he asked, his voice low, smooth, but clipped. Like each word was carefully measured before he let it out. "Yeah, Jesse, handyman for the complex." I nodded toward the door. "Looks like this guy's giving you trouble." Adrien stepped aside silently, letting me in. His apartment was neat, too neat. Furniture still had showroom stiffness, no clutter, no personality, except for a single photo frame on the counter, face down. I knelt to inspect the frame around the door. "Someone install this in a hurry?" I asked, more to myself than to him. "I wouldn't know," he said. "I just moved in last week. It's been a transition." There was a pause, the kind of silence where you can hear the air conditioner kicking in. I looked up. He was watching me, not in a creepy way, more like he was trying to figure out if I was a threat or a distraction. "Rough week," I offered, prying the molding loose. "You could say that." He gave a tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He wasn't flirtatious. He wasn't even friendly. But there was something there, a kind of quiet storm behind his posture, like he was holding it all in by sheer force of will. I've worked in hundreds of apartments, fixed everything from ceiling leaks to sex toys stuck in the drain situations, but I'd never met anyone like Adrien, and I had a feeling this wasn't just going to be about a door. The door was a disaster. Whoever installed the frame must have skipped a level and just prayed for the best. It was warped at the hinge side and pinching hard against the jamb every time it closed. The screws were cheap, the shims were off, and honestly, I was a little insulted on behalf of doors everywhere. "This is going to take a minute," I said, prying it open with the flat bar from my kit. "Did you notice it sticking when you first moved in?" Adrien hovered a few feet away, arms crossed over his chest like he wasn't sure if he should be supervising or hiding. "No, it seemed fine the first day. Started acting up 2 nights ago. Thought maybe the humidity." "It wasn't humidity. It was crap craftsmanship." "Do you want coffee?" he asked suddenly. I looked up, surprised. His tone didn't match the offer, like he wasn't used to asking. "Sure, black, if you've got it." He vanished into the kitchen, and I heard the soft gurgle of a fancy-looking coffee machine start up. I tried not to stare, but there wasn't much else to look at besides pristine furniture and blank white walls. Everything about the apartment felt temporary, like he was staying here until he found somewhere better, or maybe safer. I spotted the same photo frame I'd seen earlier on the counter. It was dented at one corner, the glass slightly cracked, still face down. I debated picking it up, curiosity tugging at me, but didn't. Not my business. When he returned, he handed me a ceramic mug without a word and leaned against the far wall, watching me as I removed the door completely from its hinges. "Thanks," I said, sipping. It was better than I expected. "So, moving's always a pain. What made you pick this place?" He hesitated. Then, in a voice that sounded like it had practiced being nonchalant, he said, "It was available and quiet." I glanced up. "Quiet's good, especially after the chaos of a move." He gave a soft huff, almost a laugh. "It wasn't just a move. I left someone, needed out fast." That explained the bare walls and the tension in his shoulders. "Sorry to hear that," I said, setting the door on the floor and pulling out a measuring tape. "Breakups suck, or so I've been told." "You've never?" "Oh, I've had my fair share. Guys who said they wanted something serious and bailed as soon as it got inconvenient." I smirked. "I guess heartbreak's kind of universal." He nodded, and for a moment there was a softness behind those guarded eyes. Then he shifted slightly, and I caught sight of a thin bandage just above his wrist, half covered by his shirt cuff. Something in me flinched, not visibly, I hope. I'd seen injuries like that before. Worked maintenance at a crisis shelter one summer. You learn not to ask unless you're invited to. I focused on adjusting the hinge plate, tightening new screws into better anchored studs. This'll hold better now. You might still feel a little drag, but it won't jam. Adrien walked over slowly, watching me with a kind of cautious interest. "You're good at this," I shrugged. "Been doing it long enough. Broken things make sense to me." Our eyes met for half a second too long. He started, turning toward the kitchen. "Right," I said at the same time, standing. "I'll just pack up." He nodded and disappeared into the other room. I took my time putting away the tools. Something about the interaction lingered. There was tension, sure, but it wasn't just awkwardness. It was like standing next to a locked room, knowing there was something inside, but not having the right key. Yet, the door opened and shut perfectly now. Satisfying click, clean line. But something told me this wasn't the last time I'd be. In apartment 3C, I left my business card on the counter, just in case. The second call came 2 days later. "Hi, Jesse. It's Adrien from 3C, he said, like I wouldn't remember, as if I hadn't replayed our short, strange interaction about 100 times since. "I remember," I said, maybe too quickly. "What's up?" "There's a leak under the kitchen sink. It's not urgent. But I figured if you're around." I was. I always seemed to be around when it came to him. I showed up that afternoon. The leak was a slow drip from a loose washer, easily fixed in 10 minutes, but he lingered nearby the whole time, watching like I might vanish if he blinked. "Can I offer you something?" he asked, after I tightened the last valve. "Coffee again? Tea? I have sparkling water?" "Surprise me," I said, smiling. He handed me a lemon-lime can like it was a peace offering. We ended up sitting at the kitchen island, talking about nothing. Weather, city traffic, how weird the neighbors were. That should have been it. But the calls kept coming. The next week it was a jammed bathroom cabinet, then a light that flickered weird, then a towel rack that might be loose. By the fourth visit, I started to suspect there wasn't anything really broken, but I came anyway. Because between each small fix, something else was happening. We talked more, laughed more. He had this dry, cutting humor that came out in flashes, just enough to make me want to dig deeper. He made fun of my beat-up work boots. I teased him about his ridiculous collection of expensive teas. It became a kind of rhythm. He'd hover nearby, arms crossed, tossing sarcastic one-liners while I worked. I started looking forward to the banter more than the job itself. We played music sometimes. He liked old records. Jazz, mostly. Sometimes synth-pop when he thought I wasn't listening too closely. He had a thing for 80s power ballads, which I mocked relentlessly until I caught myself humming one in the elevator the next day. Still, there were walls. Emotional. Drywall. Perfectly painted, but hollow if you knocked hard enough. I didn't push. I didn't ask about the photo frame, still face down, or the new bruising I glimpsed once on the inside of his forearm. He wore long sleeves even in warm weather, and always said, "I'm fine," before anyone could ask if he wasn't. And yet, little things told me he trusted me. The way he opened the door before I knocked. The way he let me into the silence of his space without apology. It was during one of those slow, aimless afternoons, flickering light bulb day, I think, when things shifted. I was standing on the stepladder, adjusting the overhead fixture in his bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, sipping peppermint tea like a Victorian ghost. "You ever wonder how you ended up doing this?" he asked out of nowhere. "Fixing lights? No. Walking into strangers' apartments, becoming part of their lives for like 20 minutes. I smirked. "Deep question for a guy with a loose bulb." He shrugged. "I think about stuff. You're not just a handyman, Jesse. You're—" He trailed off, staring into his mug. "Something in between," I finished for him. "Not quite friend. Not quite stranger." He looked up. "Yeah." I stepped off the ladder. "You wanna know a secret?" He raised an eyebrow. I used to think I'd end up doing something different. Design, architecture, something big. But this job, being in people's lives, even just a little, it's honest. Things break. I fix them. No corporate meetings. No suits. Just clarity. He smiled softly. I liked that. The room was quiet. Too quiet. I looked at him, and for a heartbeat, he looked back like he wanted something to happen. Like if I leaned forward, he wouldn't stop me. I did. Just an inch. He didn't move. Just breathed. Then I pulled back. A breath too fast. A blink too wide. "I should head out," I said, breaking the moment like glass underfoot. He nodded once, too quickly. "Of course. Thanks again." No sarcastic send-off this time. Just silence. As I packed up, he lingered by the door, not opening it until I was ready to leave. I walked past him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his arm, but not close enough to brush against him. Outside in the hallway, the air felt colder than it should have. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that it was too soon, that he wasn't ready, but the truth was, I was scared too, and I had no idea if he'd call again. The storm started in the early afternoon. Dark skies, rumbling thunder, sheets of rain slapping against the high-rise. Windows like they had something to prove. I was already in 3C, halfway through patching a warped ceiling vent in the hallway. Some old moisture damage had loosened the brackets, and Adrien had asked, softly, almost apologetically, if I could. "Just take a look." He didn't say much as I worked. He rarely did when something was actually broken. Then, just as I was tightening the last screw, the lights flickered, twice, and went out, a beat of silence. Then the hollow hum of the AC cut off, and the rain outside suddenly felt louder. "Generators. Probably delayed," I said, stepping off the ladder. "Should kick in within a minute or two." It didn't. Adrien lit a candle, of course he had candles, and brought one over in a simple glass holder. He set it on the counter between us, and the soft flame painted his face in flickering gold. The tension in his shoulders was more visible now, like the dark made it harder for him to pretend. "Sorry," he said, though I wasn't sure why. "For the lights? Or for dragging me over in the middle of a hurricane?" He let out a breath. That might have been a laugh. "Both, maybe." I leaned against the wall. "This place is going to get stuffy fast without the vents running. You okay?" He hesitated, and then, like a tide giving up its resistance, he nodded. "Yeah, I just don't like the dark." The silence after that wasn't empty. It was full of things unsaid. I didn't press. I just stood there, waiting. until he sat down on the edge of the couch and looked at the candle like it was his only anchor. "I was with someone," he said finally. "Before this, I sat across from him, quiet. He was charming. Everyone liked him. But behind closed doors," Adrien paused, tracing a finger along the base of the candle. "He needed control, all the time, over what I wore, who I spoke, to where I went." My throat tightened. "Did he—" "Yes," Adrien said, barely audible. "Not always, but enough." The rain outside felt farther away now. I left one morning with a backpack and my phone. That was it. He looked up, meeting my eyes. I didn't even know where I was going, just knew I had to go. I moved to the floor, closer but still giving him space. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to flinch, or judge, or tell him what he should have done differently. I didn't. "You were brave," I said quietly. "Getting out. Starting. Over." He smiled, brittle but real. "You don't know how many people tell me that and still look at me like I'm broken. I don't think you're broken, Adrien." I paused. "I think you're still healing. And that's different." His eyes glassed over, just for a second. "I feel safe when you're here, Jesse. That scares me more than it should." I didn't know what to say to that. Not exactly. So I just sat with him in the silence, letting the candlelight dance between us. Eventually, I reached out, slowly, like approaching a spooked animal, and let my fingers brush against his. He didn't pull away. In fact, he leaned in. The kiss started hesitant, barely more than a question. His lips were soft, unsure, trembling just a little. I kissed him like I'd wanted to for weeks, but gently, carefully, like pressing my hand to a cracked pane of glass. And then he pulled back, sharp, like a breath caught in his chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I can't." My hand was still halfway raised when he stood, backing toward the hallway. "It's not you, I thought I was ready, I'm not." "Hey," I said, standing too but not stepping forward. "It's okay. You don't have to explain." He nodded, but his eyes were glassy again, and he disappeared into his bedroom before I could say anything else. I sat back down on the couch. The rain hadn't let up, and the building was still dark. The candle flickered alone on the table. I didn't leave, not right away, because some things, like healing, like trust, take time, and I was willing to wait. It started with silence, not the quiet kind Adrien wore like a second skin. This was different, a dull, empty silence that dragged on long after the storm had passed. He didn't text, didn't call. I waited a day, then two, told myself he was busy, maybe shaken, maybe embarrassed. I sent a simple message. "Hey, just checking in, hope you're okay." No response. I tried again 2 days later. "No pressure, just thinking about you." Still nothing. The rational part of me said I should let it go. Had every right to take space, to figure out what he needed. But the part of me that had felt his hand in mine, had kissed him by candlelight, couldn't stop wondering if I'd broken something just by caring too much. Had I misread the signs? Had I pushed him? The thought stuck to my ribs like wet concrete. Work got busy that week. A busted pipe in a basement unit, an emergency HVAC repair across town. I buried myself in jobs, in the noise of drills and duct tape, in the comfort of tasks that had solutions. Still, Adrien haunted the quiet moments. I kept glancing at my phone, kept waiting for his name to light up the screen. It didn't, and beneath the ache of missing him was an older ache, one I hadn't felt in a long time. "Don't get too close. You always want too much." That voice belonged to Ryan, my last long-term relationship. 3 years of slow erosion. He used to say I came on too strong, that my version of love felt like pressure. Like I was trying to fix people the way I fixed broken doors and crooked shelves. I'm not your project, Jesse, he'd snapped once, after I surprised him with dinner and a long-overdue conversation about our future. Stop trying to build something out of scraps. It had taken me months to stop believing him, and yet, sitting alone in my workshop now, surrounded by tools and scrap wood, I could still hear it, still feel that old shame creeping back in. Maybe Adrien had seen it too. Maybe I was too much. So I told myself to stop. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes. I stopped taking the long route through the building that passed his hallway. I stopped mentioning him when my buddy Chris asked why I seemed distracted. I poured myself into work, extending shifts, taking extra calls, going home exhausted just to sleep and wake up and do it all again. But no matter how many sinks I fixed, or thermostats I recalibrated, I couldn't shake the memory of the way Adrien had looked at me in the dark, vulnerable, open, terrified. The way he'd kissed me like he wanted to trust again, and the way he'd flinched the moment he did. It wasn't my job to save him. I knew that, but I also couldn't lie to myself. He mattered. More than a quick connection, more than a moment, and whether or not he ever reached out again, I had to face the truth. I wasn't just falling for Adrien. I'd already fallen. It was almost midnight when the knock came. I was half asleep on the couch, some old action movie flickering across the TV, a half-eaten bowl of pasta forgotten on the coffee table. Rain tapped at the windows like a restless child, the same stormy rhythm that had started this whole strange connection. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. I froze. Not many people knew where I lived, and fewer still came by unannounced, especially at this hour. When I opened the door, I didn't speak right away. I couldn't. Adrien stood there soaked to the bone. His hoodie clung to him, dripping water onto the welcome mat, hair plastered to his forehead. Eyes red, maybe from the cold, maybe not. He looked like someone who'd run through the storm just to make a point. And maybe he had. "Hey," he said, voice hoarse. "I know it's late." I stepped aside without a word and let him in. He peeled off his wet hoodie and I handed him a towel. He stood in the entryway, drying his face like he was stalling for time. Like he didn't know how to start. "I thought about texting," he said finally. "But I knew if I saw your name come up on my screen, I'd just delete it and pretend it didn't matter." "It mattered," I said quietly. He nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between us, but this time it wasn't cold. "I panicked," he said. "After that night. I was scared." I gave a small nod. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I do," he cut in, stepping closer. "Because you didn't do anything wrong, and I left you standing there like you had." He ran a hand through his damp hair. "I've been surviving for so long, I forgot how to actually feel safe with someone. And then you walked into my life with your dumb tool belt and your smart mouth, and suddenly I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was wanting." His eyes met mine, raw and searching, and that scared the hell out of me. I felt my chest tighten, part ache, part relief. "I don't want you to be another temporary fix," he said. "You're not duct tape. You're not a patch. You're real. And if I let myself believe I deserve that, then I have to believe in something again." He stepped even closer. "And I want to." I didn't reply. I just reached up, cupped the side of his face and pulled him gently toward me. Our lips met, and this time there was no hesitation. No flinch, no fear holding him back. It was a kiss built on everything we hadn't said, on quiet glances and brushed hands and flickering candlelight. It was messy, breathless, and soaked in rain and emotion, but it was real. He clutched the front of my shirt like he was anchoring himself. I held him steady, not pressing, just being there. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested together. He was still shivering a little. "Come on," I said, taking his hand. "Let's get you warm." I gave him a change of clothes, soft, sweatpants and an old hoodie that hung off his frame, and we climbed into bed without ceremony. No tension, no expectations, just warmth. He curled up beside me, head on my chest, his breath evening out slowly. My arm wrapped around him instinctively, like I'd done it 1,000 times in dreams. "Is this okay?" I whispered. He nodded against me. More than okay. The rain kept falling outside, but it felt distant now. For the first time in a long time, Adrien was still, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. A few weeks passed, and the silence between us didn't return. Not the kind that hurts. There were pauses, sure, hesitations, but they were gentle, like someone stepping carefully across a bridge they weren't sure would hold. And I was okay with that. I had my own repairs to make, too. Adrien still didn't call unless he really needed something, but he texted. He made coffee in the mornings when I stayed over. He played his favorite records when he cooked dinner. I learned the names of the musicians he liked, and he learned that I snored softly if I fell asleep with one arm over my head. It was quiet, but it was real. One Saturday morning, he asked if I could look at something a little bigger in the apartment. He hesitated when he said it, which told me immediately it was more than just a crooked cabinet. The wall behind his bookshelf, far left corner of the living room, had warped. When I pulled the shelf away and peeled back the paint, I found it. The ugly, familiar bloom of water damage, blackened drywall, mold streaking the studs, the faint smell of decay rising with every layer removed. "You didn't notice this earlier?" I asked gently. "I don't usually look behind things," he said, and I didn't miss the weight behind those words. He stood next to me while I examined the rot. His arms were crossed tightly, like he was waiting for bad news. "It's fixable," I said, "but we'll have to open it up, get in deep, see what's behind it all." He gave a tight nod, and just like that, the metaphor was standing right between us, undeniable, awkward, and honest. "I used to do this," he said after a while. "Cover stuff up, push a nice piece of furniture in front of it and pretend everything behind it was fine." I looked up from my tool kit. "You're not doing that anymore." "No," he said, quieter now. "I'm not. We worked on it together over the next couple days. Cut the wall open, dried it out, reinforced the studs, patched in clean drywall. It wasn't glamorous work, but there was something calming about it. Adrien handed me tools, asked questions, even helped sand the new surface smooth. It wasn't fast, but it was steady. That Friday, after we repainted the section and pushed the bookshelf back into place, I pulled something out of my bag. It was the picture frame I'd noticed weeks ago, dented, cracked glass, once hidden behind a stack of books on his end table. I had quietly taken it with me the last time I'd left his apartment, hoping he wouldn't think I was snooping. Now, it had a new pane of glass, a new backing. The old photo, Adrien and a dog I hadn't yet asked about, was carefully pressed inside. I handed it to him without a word. His fingers trembled when he took it. He sat down slowly, studying the frame like he'd never seen it before. "You fixed it," he murmured. "I wanted to give it back in better shape than I found it." He looked up at me, something glassy and bright in his eyes. Like me? I didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. He wasn't a broken picture frame. He wasn't a cracked wall. He was someone learning how to tear down what was rotting and build something real in its place. We sat side by side on the couch, the repaired wall behind us, the frame between us. "I don't want to rush this," he said, "but I do want this." I reached over, gently laced my fingers through his. "Then let's build it right," I said, "one solid step at a time." It's been a few weeks since we patched up the wall, but I haven't really left since. My name's not on the lease. I still keep my own place technically, but my toothbrush lives in Adrien's bathroom now. My favorite hoodie is always draped over his kitchen chair. And my toolbox, well, it's taken up permanent residence under his hallway table, right next to the umbrella stand we keep forgetting to use. He doesn't call me every time something breaks anymore. Now, he calls just to ask if I'm hungry, or to tell me he found a song he thinks I'll like, or just to say, hey, which, from Adrien, is a full paragraph. One night, while we were curled up on the couch, reruns playing. Low in the background, he nudged me with his foot and grinned. You know, he said, you're not really my handyman anymore. I raised an eyebrow. No? He shrugged. Well, you're still handy, but now I just call you mine. It hit me harder than I expected. Not the word, but the way he said it. Soft, playful, sure, like it wasn't a risk anymore. We didn't have some big defining moment. No fireworks, no declarations in the pouring rain. Just slow mornings with shared coffee, evenings with music and mismatched socks, easy laughter, long looks that said more than either of us used to be able to. Sometimes, when Adrien thinks I'm asleep, he'll trace lazy circles on my chest with his fingers. Like he's checking I'm still there, still real, I always am. I came to 3C to fix a door, a stubborn, stuck thing that wouldn't open no matter how hard someone tried. And in the process, I found someone who'd been stuck just like it, shut, tight behind layers of pain and silence. But Adrien opened, slowly, unevenly, honestly. And somewhere along the way, so did I. Turns out the best thing I've ever repaired wasn't a wall or a hinge or even a water-damaged floor. It was this, us, built on truth, held together by trust. And maybe that's all love really is, a foundation strong enough to hold the weight of two people trying. Together. The end.